The first part is when we talk about leading awake and we ask people to create these ecosystems of belonging and unity where everyone thrives and flourishes, we are necessarily talking about transforming what's present, not fixing, not changing, but transforming and elevating. That sort of maps to um, how we as humanity, our sort of higher consciousness, our awakening of what is truth in our collective reality and where the pieces fit and where we all fit together. So there is great toxicity in these systems that you have shared, but the toxicity isn't just because it's capitalism, imperialism, or patriarchy. It is an over indexing on one side of the spectrum. So one of the things that I like to talk about with people often is we have to find a way to bring in femininity, sort of the feminine, the power of the feminine, in a way that is equal to the power of the masculine. This has nothing to do with our gender or sex. This has to do with the energy that sits in all of us. We all hold masculine energy. We all hold feminine energy. And where we have over indexed in society and humanity is on the masculinity. And so what we're beginning to see with this awakening is that there are this infusion so that we're meeting and moving on the spectrum closer to the center. Now, in that shift, there are many people who will fear losing power. They fear the shift means they lose something. And in many senses, there is a power loss, but it's really a power shift and a power harmonizing and balancing. And in order to broker those conversations, to create invitations and open doors to have them, one of the things we have to do, those of us who are in the places where we're trying to have these conversations and cultivate these insights, is to show up in non-judgmental roles. We can dislike vehemently the way our systems in a particular country or community or the laws are inequitably applied to different population sets. But when we come to the table to try and resolve it, we have to do it in a way that's an invitation for hard conversation. So I'll give you an example. And sometimes when I do my work, I'm not a diversity and equity inclusion specialist, but I can't help but do my work with a diversity, equity, sort of inclusion and belonging lens. I think that when we ask ourselves to do our inner work, we must look at that lens that we've created and what's that filter that's impacting how we're showing up and the discomfort we feel in our bodies. And in one scenario where I was having a conversation, a gentleman who was very well known in some of these spaces said, "That's fine, women can get all the power they want. I'm just not giving up any." And so many times we feel like we're rubbing up against a door or a wall or a ceiling. But the other thing we have to keep in mind is the generation, the Gen Z and the millennials who are arriving new to this game and this conversation are extremely active and extremely clear and intentional about the world they want to create. So aligning and allying with those generations as well to help create a new reality is critically important. And when you notice people getting upset or uncomfortable about having these conversations, remember that we always have to meet people where they're at. Even in times of urgency, while we're showing and leading the way through modeling and information, we cannot expect the switch to be turned on overnight when it took decades for that person as an embodied sort of adult human being. It took many years, many life experiences, many crucibles, many things that formed who they are today. So if we can do our work to help meet where they are today, and when you meet somebody knowing who you are, it's a very different kind of dialogue. It doesn't mean that it's not intense, and it doesn't mean it's not direct. What it means is that you can move from judgment and certainty into discernment and curiosity, and you can then have a dialogue that's civil around shifting from position to shared interest. And the language we pick is very important. Now, I mean, I sit here and I think about all that's happening, and there's so many times where I feel very angry. But if I showed up angry in my work, I wouldn't be doing a service to myself or to anyone else. And so our work is to do our inner work so that we can hold and create containers. These containers are not safe spaces. And here's why I say that. We often talk in our work, we want to create a safe space. It doesn't matter whether that's what we want to do, because many people in these conversations don't feel safe. What we are trying to do and endeavor to do is create brave spaces for people to be courageous, despite the fact that they feel vulnerable and afraid. And if we hold a brave space container properly, then people can get angry, they can get emotional, and it's okay. Now, all of that is a corollary, and the companion activity to that is wise action based on mindful awareness and compassion.